Hello there, and welcome to A Film a Day with me, Jordan Woodley. Jerry Maguire is definitely one of those films that, like everyone, you get the, I suppose, the memeable sections of it, the lines that everyone's heard of, like, show me the money, or the big storm out scene of The Office, or the you had me at hello, things that are so in the cultural zeitgeist that whether you have heard of Jerry Maguire, whether you know those quotes or clips from Jerry Maguire, or whether you're not even a film person, I'd be hard pressed to meet someone who hasn't at least heard one of those quotes or know, somewhere in the back of their mind. And so when I went into watching Jerry Maguire, I assumed I had a certain expectation of what kind of film I was going in to see, bearing in mind this is my first viewing of it. And the way that Jerry Maguire has always been presented to me through moments like that or any of the reading I've done of Jerry Maguire, I got the impression that it was a much more straight down the line comedy. Not only that, but I thought it was sort of steeped in sort of that 90s soft filter schmaltz that you got, very much your Christopher Columbus type films. And that's no sort of attack on Christopher Columbus, but that kind of film where it has interesting moments and funny ideas, but it's softballing. It's not going to challenge you as an audience. It's sort of playing to the stands. And actually, I'm very, very wrong about that. Jerry Maguire, though it is a comedy, and on the surface level, it does have a sense of not schmaltz, but like you can tell there's a sentimentality amongst the ideas of it. It's actually a much more complex character film. And frankly, it even does things like breaks from traditional narrative structures to almost rely on subtext and almost feeling, the way that the audience will intuit relationships rather than showing it to us. So that when characters make decisions, when we see the relationships between characters forge and break and repair, rather than showing us, as a traditional filmmaker might, show us a scene to dramatically represent reasons for these moments between characters, it actually chooses to steer away from that. You do have moments like that, like the moment where Jerry Maguire, the meet cute moment between Jerry and Dorothy. But it very much starts almost in a way that is more like one of those traditional films where you have your sort of reflective voiceover narrations from Jerry Maguire, Tom Cruise, that then goes into the more sort of traditional office comedy, like a film like Office Space or sort of your more sort of traditional sense of passive aggression, funny set pieces, awkward moments, at least in the first 20-30 minutes of it. But then, once it's established your characters and your settings, it really does become a much deeper, much more character-based story. More akin to the mature Robin Williams films. Not quite sort of his darker, more serious Robin Williams films, but the films where, it's not quite as sort of as obvious as a film like Mrs. Doubtfire, where it sort of wears its heart on its sleeve, but sort of the middle ground films where it's trying to play seriously, still trying to be funny through the characters, but ultimately is supposed to be a drama and a character examination. I mean, what's remarkable about this is the fact that it's, having, of course, watched several of these kind of 80s and 90s corporate sort of analyses films, you get that sense that we're in the period where a lot of Hollywood films are really wanting to examine and dissect that era or the preceding era of corporate America. Films like Vampire's Kiss, or Office Space, or Trading Places, or one I've covered, and the name has gone out of my head, but there is that sense, or even American Psycho, that's the one. American Psycho, you get that sense that, there is a really deep held desire to want to look at this particular space and the culture that's sort of arisen from it, and you get that sense of, white male, business, new money, sort of market driven style to it. You get that sense of, oh, we're really looking at these characters from that perspective. And what I have to say Jerry Maguire does amazingly is it takes the power away from Jerry. The fact is that this film is really keen on looking at gender dynamics and racial dynamics, but in a subtextual way. We have Rod, the only client who sticks with Jerry after his big walkout, and without sort of delving into sort of the racial politics of it, the idea is that the power play becomes flipped, and you get that sense that Rod knows that he is the only thing that's stopping Jerry from losing everything. Similarly, with Dorothy, you get that sense that she knows that she is essentially... She even says later in the film she is taking advantage of a man who's sort of at a crisis point. And I like the fact that it sort of examines these dynamics and the way that what if the power was taken away from someone who in a particular place and time would be seen as sort of the power, the sort of patriarchal domination upon these dynamics. And I think that really does give it a depth and character piece that, like I say, there is a lot going on in this film, so that in certain moments, characters' decisions aren't particularly superficial or one-dimensional. You do feel like, even with the Show Me the Money scene, the oft quoted Show Me the Money scene, there's a lot more going on when you get the sense of what Rod's circumstances are, And as I realise in this conversation, I haven't talked about the sport that much, because this is one of those sports-focused films that, frankly, I'm being a little unkind by saying it's not about the sport. There is a lot of it which is about sport and about American football and about Korea, but it's more about the dynamics of sport and someone like Rod, who, is sort of seeing his career currently on a knife's edge, and he has to act a certain way because he feels this sense of being put down by an industry that he thought would support him. But it's not about football, really. American football. It's not about American football, really. There are interesting themes about football. Particularly, I'm fascinated about sort of the injury aspect of it. That is a repeated motif in the film, where we see different characters get injured, and the long-term effect it's having on these characters, that made me actually think at some point in the near future I would like to watch the Will Smith film Concussion, which I've been mulling over for a little while. But as I say, it's only about the sport insofar as it's about the politics of sport and sort of the nature of a sportsman's career and the constant sense of risk and calculation that goes into decisions made by sportsmen in how they can propel their career, how they can safeguard it, the fact that they are on a ticking clock, before they are no longer of any value, and so they need to make sure they are in the strongest position because of that. And of course, that is the Jerry Maguire dynamic, as the sports agent, trying to make that deal whilst also trying to safeguard his own needs. And of course, the whole thing about morality. If you put this as a double bill against something like American Psycho, what I like about this film is the fact that Jerry Maguire is about a man who is questioning whether he is a sociopath, or even a psychopath, perhaps. In fact, because it's about his inability to form true relationships. That all of his relationships are calculations, are business decisions, are status decisions, without a sense of authenticity to them, or sincerity to them. And the thesis, if there is one, is the idea is, can someone who perceives himself in that way, is he doomed because of the industry he's in, because of the type of personality he's built around himself? Can he form those relationships? And the film really goes to task, as I say, using subtext, using inference, to make you really question that. And like I said, it's not completely without sentiment and without schmaltz, but the fact that you go a long way through this film questioning the relationship between Jerry and Rod, or the relationship between Jerry and Dorothy, or even Dorothy's son Ray, and whether this is someone who wants to have real relationships, or whether he is actually able to form them without it being part of a grand plan that he thinks he has to be on. As I say, this film is a lot richer and a lot more complex than I've given it any credit for, and I do regret sort of dismissing it over the years, thinking, oh, Jerry Maguire, it's one of those sort of 90s sort of softball, sultry comedy sort of pieces, when actually, as I say, there is a lot going on here and a lot to chew over, and I think it is a significantly more interesting film than a superficial sort of understanding of it grants it. Anyway, thank you for joining me. If you like this video, hit the like button, comment below, and share the video, because this will help me in the algorithm. Subscribe to the channel and hit that bell to get notifications of when new videos are uploaded, and check out my back catalogue of almost 250 videos. Follow me on Twitter at Jordan_Woodley, where I tweet about TV shows and films, and I share these videos once they're uploaded to YouTube, either the day of or the day after. Thank you for joining me. Take care.